right. Before I begin, I'd like everyone to look at the people around you and look carefully. Who do you see? Friends, colleagues, family members? Not criminals, hopefully. The sad fact remains, though, that for every 20 people gathered here in this room, studies indicate that at least one of you will see the inside of a jail cell. And the worst part, it won't even be your fault. Such findings are disturbingly illustrative of a deep rooted issue in society. When innocent individuals are accused, they confess to crimes they didn't commit, not because they believe it, but because they don't know how else to respond. And so the question is raised, how, with a supposedly fair justice system, can such mistakes occur? My name is Athena Wang, and ever since I was small, I set my sights on becoming a lawyer. Not because of the money or power that it could provide, but because I wanted people to have their voices heard. The longer I spent exploring this area, the more apparent it became that, to us, the law was just this old, dusty idea that only became relevant when someone was deep in trouble. And honestly, what I learned was that fairness is contingent on knowing the game. They said that if I was there and if I went along with it, that I could go home. And that's all I wanted. That's all I wanted was to go home. These were the words of 16-year-old Corey Wise. On the night of April 19th, 1989, a 28-year-old female jogger was brutally attacked and raped in Central Park, New York. After prolonged periods of police investigation, 5 Latino and African American teenagers, including Corey Wise, falsely confessed to being responsible for the attack. Even though there was no evidence linking them to the crime, they still admitted it as such. At age 16, Wise was tried as an adult and convicted of rape, sexual abuse, and assault. It was only in 2002, after serving prison sentences of 6 to 13 years, where the boys finally released after a serial rapist confessed his guilt. Corey Wise spent 11.5 years of his life in jail, all because of his confession, his false confession for a crime he did not commit. Wise crumbled under the pressure. A 16-year-old facing off against these menacing authorities, just wanting to go home. The case later became known as the Central Park Five, a highlight in a pre-law course that I took. If Wise had known the very basics of legal rights, he would have known to, 1, not talk to authorities without first consulting an attorney, and 2, invoke the Fifth Amendment, his right to remain silent, to prevent himself from giving incriminating testimony. However, in order to see how this racial injustice truly progresses, we must also consider the social factors that come into play. As one of the teenagers in the Central Park Five said, "You must remember that we are 14, 15, 16-year-old kids who had never had an experience with the law, who had never had any criminal record, and these were seasoned detectives. So going into that situation, the playing field was already unlevel. And as such, we must consider that in order to consider the racial injustice behind this issue, here's a graph that illustrates it, created by the American Association. As seen as such, the American Census Bureau found that while 13% of the nation's population were constituted of African Americans, they only made up 40% of the prison population and 60% of all exonerations. Yes, there may have been freedom, but this freedom came at a cost: time. Corey Wise, in an interview about the Central Park Five, said, "No amount of money could bring that time back. No amount of money could bring back the life that I was missing or the time that was stolen away from me." And as such, we are able to see even racial injustice has progressed beyond a simple dislike to manifest itself in very real ways. According to the Equal Justice Initiative, there's a widespread presumption that black men are suspicious, dangerous, and criminal. What if judges assume that some people are inherently less innocent than others? As from the OECD, the lack of economic resources in low-income groups also prevents them from accessing legal resources, including lawyer fees and opportunity costs that are needed to resolve legal disputes in court. In my own country, Singapore, More than half of all litigants said that they could not afford a lawyer, and 30% believed that they did not require professional legal services, as found by the Criminal Justice Club of the National University of Singapore. The issue here is that self-represented litigants are far more likely to commit serious mistakes in court. Proper representation can make or break a case. And so once again, I hearken back to the idea of fairness. The game of justice is already rigged against minority groups and those of low socioeconomic status. And so, what does this mean? Does this mean that we should completely abandon the law and lose all faith in it? No, of course not. The law still shapes human behavior as we know it, and as such, it is so important for us to familiarize ourselves with it. Only then can we define fairness in our own terms. Now, looking at everyone gathered here today, I'd say that the following generalization rings true. We never stop moving. Students are buried knee-deep in work, while most adults work a 9-to-5 job every day. Defending ourselves from incarceration isn't the top of our to-do list. Speaking from an IB student's perspective, if something isn't directly related to our grades, why should we waste our time and effort on it? Then again, that's exactly the type of thinking that these victims would have had. And I like to emphasize this because juveniles, children, are 2 to 3 times more likely to falsely confess in court. So, what is the solution? I argue this. If and when you encounter the law, an equal playing field is only possible when you know your legal rights, especially if you are inherently disadvantaged because of the color of your skin or how much money you make. The law isn't going to fix itself as soon as you're the one at risk. So what are you waiting for? Students, if your curriculum doesn't cover the basic laws of where you live, then take action. There are plenty of other life skills that aren't taught at school, like how to pay taxes or how to start a family. For me, I did this through taking self-guided courses online on platforms like Coursera and FutureLearn. After that, share your knowledge, just like what I will be doing with the establishment of a law club. Lastly, as for the youth, always remember to question why we do the things we do. Don't follow authority blindly. Even 10 minutes spent exploring your country's laws online can mean a difference between walking free and wasting 10 years behind bars. All this to say, fairness is a great concept guiding the actions of the courts, but that's all it will ever be, a concept. In theory, a set of legal rights is made available to all citizens, regardless of their race, age, or gender. In practice, however, those who deserve justice the most, marginalized groups, people of color, those are the people most wronged by the system. And this is a flaw within the system itself, and it is one that we must fix. We romanticize the law as this unshakable foundation upon which society rests on. And this may well be true. But for this system to actually function, all of its members must be well educated in their legal rights. In a world where words have become the weapon of choice, we must learn to wield ours properly. The courtroom is the modern battlefield, and it's time for us, the younger generation, to learn how to fight. Thank you.